Velthar had been among the humans for 2 months when he made the discovery that changed everything. While helping Lieutenant Somin with communication duties, he accidentally intercepted encrypted Krek's military transmissions. What he heard made his blood freeze. "Command, this is Battle Group 7, came the desperate voice of a Krek's commander. "We are requesting immediate withdrawal from the human sectors." "Negative, Battle Group 7, replied Krek's High Command. "You have superior numbers and firepower. Continue the assault." "Sir, you don't understand. These aren't normal soldiers. They're the nightmare species. My warriors are refusing to fight them." Velthar listened in growing shock as the transmission continued. The Krek's commander described humans in terms that bordered on supernatural terror. He spoke of soldiers who fought with impossible courage, who showed mercy to enemies, who turned love into the deadliest weapon in the galaxy. "We've encountered 3 other species that tried to warn us," the commander continued. "The hegemony fled their entire sector rather than fight humans. The collective surrendered without firing a shot. Command, these creatures are not like anything we've ever faced." That night, Velthar accessed the Dominion's xenological databases. What he found confirmed his worst fears. Humanity had been in contact with dozens of alien civilizations over the past century. Every single encounter followed the same pattern. First contact was always peaceful. Humans approached with offers of trade and friendship. But when threatened or attacked, they became something else entirely. Species after species had learned the same lesson: never threaten what humans love. The files contained reports from the Syndicate Wars, where humans had fought for 18 years to protect a single agricultural colony. They described the liberation of Kepler Station, where human marines had assaulted an impregnable fortress to rescue captured civilians from a species they barely knew. Most disturbing was a report from the Centauri expedition. An entire alien empire had surrendered after witnessing human soldiers sacrifice themselves to save enemy children during a planetary evacuation. Velthar realized he wasn't studying a military force. He was observing the most dangerous predator species in galactic history. The revelation came as he was preparing his final reports. Captain Park approached him in the command center, his expression serious but not hostile. "Dr. Jahoon Kim," Captain Park said quietly. "Or should I say Dr. Velthar of the Dominion Council?" Velthar's heart stopped beating. His careful disguise had been discovered. He expected arrest, interrogation, possibly execution as a spy. Instead, Captain Park smiled sadly. "Relax, Doctor. I've known for weeks. Your surgical alterations are excellent, but you still think like an alien. Your questions, your observations, your reactions to our behavior. It was obvious once I knew what to look for." "How long have you known?" Velthar asked weakly. "Since the first week. Una figured it out when she treated your illness. Your internal anatomy is completely wrong for a human. But don't worry. Your secret is safe." Velthar stared at the human commander in confusion. "You knew I was a spy and you didn't capture me?" "You weren't trying to hurt anyone," Captain Park replied. "You were just observing and learning. Besides, I wanted you to see us as we really are. Your people need to understand what they're dealing with." Captain Park led Velthar to his private office and closed the door. "Doctor, let me tell you something about humans that your databases probably don't mention. We don't fight because we're the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced. We fight because someone has to." He gestured to a photo on his desk showing his soldiers laughing around a campfire. "Every one of my people volunteered for this mission. They left comfortable lives on Earth to come to this deadly world and protect miners they'd never met. Do you know why?" Velthar shook his head. "Because those miners have families, children who need their parents to come home safely. Humans can't ignore that kind of suffering. It's not in our nature." Outside the office, they could hear the daily sounds of the base. Soldiers training, medics treating patients, engineers maintaining equipment. Normal military activities that somehow felt different when Velthar understood what drove them. "The Kreks started this war because they wanted our mining colonies," Captain Park continued. "They thought we'd be easy targets. Small, weak creatures with primitive technology. They calculated that we'd surrender quickly. But you didn't." "No, we didn't. Because surrender meant abandoning innocent people to slavery or death. Humans can't make that choice. We'll fight impossible odds before we let harm come to people under our protection." Captain Park opened a window and pointed to the mining facility in the distance. "Those workers have been sending us thank you messages every day for 2 months. Pictures of their children, Stories about their families, promises to name their babies after my soldiers. Do you think my people could abandon them? Velthar finally understood. Human military strength didn't come from technology or tactics. It came from something deeper and more dangerous than any weapon. It came from love weaponized into unstoppable determination. Doctor, Captain Park said seriously, I want you to deliver a message to your Dominion Council. Tell them that humans don't want to conquer the galaxy. We just want to be left alone to protect the people we care about. And if they don't listen, Captain Park's expression grew cold. Then they'll learn what every other species has learned. You can coexist peacefully with humans, or you can face the consequences of threatening us. There's no middle ground. That evening, Velthar witnessed the final battle for Kepler 4 and 42b. A massive Krex fleet arrived with orders to destroy the human base and claim the planet. The odds were 50-1 against the defenders. Lieutenant Soman calculated their chances of survival at less than 1%. Sir, we should evacuate while we can. Captain Park gathered his soldiers for what everyone knew would be their last stand. The evacuation ships won't arrive for 6 hours, he announced. We need to hold this position and protect the civilian transports. Velthar watched the humans prepare for certain death with the same calm efficiency they showed during routine patrols. They checked their weapons, said goodbye to each other, and took their positions on the walls. The battle was the most intense Velthar had ever seen. Wave after wave of Krex soldiers crashed against the human defenses. The base walls crumbled under heavy artillery. The communication systems failed. The power grid went down, but the humans fought on. When their ammunition ran out, they fixed bayonets to their rifles. When those broke, they used rocks and metal fragments. When Junho lost his arm to enemy fire, he picked up a weapon with his remaining hand and kept fighting. Yunanam moved through the battle like an angel of mercy, treating wounded soldiers while plasma bolts flew around her. She sang lullabies to dying men and whispered words of comfort to those in pain. Lieutenant Salmon led the final defense of the command bunker. When the Krex broke through the main gate, she stood alone against dozens of enemy warriors. She held them long enough for the civilian evacuation to complete. The Krex won the battle, but they paid a terrible price. They lost hundreds of soldiers to defeat 60 humans. More importantly, they failed to capture any civilians. Every miner, every family, every child was safely evacuated. As the Krex surveyed the destroyed base, Velthar heard their communications. The alien warriors spoke in hushed, terrified voices about what they had witnessed. These humans had fought to the death to protect people they barely knew. Command, reported the Krex battle leader. The base is secured, but at terrible cost. These humans, they fought like legends, like the ancient warrior gods of our mythology. Casualties? Over 300 dead, sir. The humans inflicted massive losses before they fell. There was a long pause in the communication. Then Krex High Command spoke in a voice heavy with new understanding. Withdraw all forces from human space immediately. Mark their territories as forbidden zones. We will not engage this species again. That night, as Velthar prepared to leave Kepler 442b, he found a message waiting for him. It was from Captain Park, who had somehow survived the final battle and escaped with the last evacuation ship. Doctor, the message read, I hope your people make the right choice. Humans prefer peace, but we're very good at war. Tell your council that we're not trapped in this galaxy with them. They're trapped in this galaxy with us. Velthar closed his eyes and prepared his final report. He would return to the Dominion Council with the most important discovery in galactic history. Humanity wasn't just another alien species. They were something new and terrible and wonderful. They had turned love into the deadliest force in the universe. Dr. Velthar stood before the massive viewing screen in the Dominion Council chambers. His 6 eyes focused on the rotating hologram of a small blue and green planet, Earth, home to the species that had been causing problems for the galaxy's most powerful empires for 3 standard cycles. The council leader's voice echoed through the chamber. Doctor, your mission is simple. Study these humans. Find their weakness. Report back to us. Velthar's tentacles twitched with curiosity. The humans have been fighting the Krex Empire for years now. How have they survived this long? The Krex have superior technology and numbers. That is exactly what we need to understand, replied Council Member Zeftos. Every military analysis suggests the humans should have been defeated within months. Yet here they are, still fighting. Still winning battles they should lose. The hologram shifted to show battle footage from the contested world of Kepler 442b. Velthar watched small human soldiers moving through smoking ruins. They looked so fragile compared to the massive Krex warriors. Their weapons seemed primitive. Their armor was basic metal and ceramic plates. "We have prepared a new identity for you," the council leader continued. "You will be surgically altered to appear human. You will infiltrate their military as Dr. Jahoon Kim, a military psychologist. Your mission is to observe their behavior during combat situations." Velthar nodded. He had studied many species before. Humans would be no different. They were probably surviving through luck or some temporary advantage. Once he identified their weakness, the Dominion could use that information to defeat them quickly. The surgery took several painful days. Velthar's natural purple skin was changed to a pale brown color. His 6 eyes were reduced to 2. His tentacles were removed and replaced with the strange human appendages called arms and legs. The process was uncomfortable but necessary. When it was complete, Velthar looked at himself in the mirror. The creature staring back looked completely human. Short black hair, brown eyes, and the typical build of a human male. He practiced speaking with his new vocal cords until the accent sounded right. "My name is Dr. Jahoon Kim," he said to his reflection. "I am a military psychologist from Earth. The transport ship to Kepler 442b took 2 weeks. During the journey, Velthar studied human culture and psychology. He read their history books and watched their entertainment videos. What he learned confused him. Humans seemed to enjoy stories about war and conflict. They celebrated warriors and soldiers. They had thousands of years of almost constant warfare in their history. Most disturbing was how they wrote songs and poems about dying in battle. When the transport arrived at Kepler 442b, Velthar saw his first human military base. It was smaller than he expected. The walls were made of simple concrete and metal. There were no force fields or energy barriers, just basic defensive structures that any modern army could easily destroy. But the humans inside moved with confidence. They laughed and talked as they worked. They showed no fear despite being in an active war zone. Velthar found this behavior strange. A tall human with short black hair and stern eyes approached him. "Dr. Kim, I'm Captain Daho Park. Welcome to Forward Base Charlie." Velthar shook the captain's hand, copying the human greeting he had studied. "Thank you, Captain. I'm here to observe and assist with psychological support for your troops." Captain Park smiled, but his eyes remained serious. "Good. We can use all the help we can get. The Krex have been pushing hard lately. My soldiers are holding up well, but combat stress is always a concern." As they walked through the base, Velthar observed everything carefully. The human soldiers looked tired but alert. Their equipment was clean and well-maintained despite its simple design. They moved with purpose and discipline. "How long have you been fighting the Krex?" Velthar asked. "About 2 years on this world," Captain Park replied. "The fighting has been intense. We've lost good people, but we're still here." They stopped at a medical tent where a young woman with her hair tied back was treating wounded soldiers. She worked quickly and efficiently, speaking softly to comfort her patients. "That's Yuna Nam, our medic," Captain Park explained. "Best field surgeon I've ever seen. She saved more lives than I can count." Velthar watched Yuna work. Her hands moved with practiced skill as she cleaned and bandaged wounds. What surprised him was how gently she treated each patient. She took time to speak with them, even though the base was clearly busy. "Dr. Kim," Captain Park continued, "I should warn you, combat here is different from what you might expect. The Krex are tough fighters. They're bigger and stronger than us. Their weapons are more advanced. But my soldiers have learned to adapt." They moved to the command center where several humans studied tactical displays. A young man with sergeant stripes pointed at a map on the screen. "Sir, Krex forces are massing here," Sergeant Minho Choi reported. "Looks like they're planning another assault on the mining facility." Captain Park studied the display. "Numbers? At least 300, maybe more," Velthar calculated quickly. He had seen the base roster. There were only 60 human soldiers here. The odds were 5-1 against them. "What will you do?" Velthar asked, expecting to hear plans for retreat or calling for reinforcements. Captain Park grinned. It was not the expression Velthar expected from someone facing impossible odds. "We're going to stop them, of course. Minho, get the squad leaders together. We need to plan our defense." As the humans began preparing for battle, Velthar felt confused. These soldiers should be afraid. They should be planning to evacuate. Instead, they seemed almost excited about the coming fight. He watched Private Hyun-Soo Lee checking his weapon with a smile on his face. Another soldier, Corporal Jun-Ho Sim, was humming as he prepared explosive charges. Even Yuna Nam looked calm as she organized her medical supplies. "Captain," Belthar said carefully, "shouldn't you request backup? The numbers are heavily against you." Captain Park looked at him with surprise. "Doctor, backup won't arrive for days. These miners are counting on us to protect them. We gave our word we'd hold this position." "But the odds are irrelevant," Captain Park interrupted. "We have a job to do. My soldiers understand that. We'll hold the line because that's what we do." That night, as Velthar prepared his first report to the Dominion Council, he struggled with what to write. These humans behaved in ways that made no logical sense. They faced overwhelming odds with confidence instead of fear. They seemed to actually look forward to battle. He typed slowly, choosing his words carefully. First observation: human soldiers display unusual psychological responses to combat stress. Further study required to understand their apparent lack of appropriate fear responses. Outside his quarters, he could hear human voices singing. They were preparing for what might be their last battle, and they were singing. Velthar closed his eyes and wondered what kind of species he had been sent to study. The alarm woke Velthar before dawn. Red lights flashed throughout the base as soldiers ran to their positions. He quickly dressed in his human clothes and rushed outside to observe what he had come here to study. Captain Park stood in the command center, completely calm despite the chaos around him. "Krek's advanced scouts spotted 2 kilometers out," he announced to his officers. "Minho, take your squad and intercept them. Keep them busy while we finish our preparations." Sergeant Minho Choi nodded and gathered his soldiers. Velthar approached Captain Park. "May I observe the patrol?" "For my research?" "Stay close to me," Captain Park agreed. "And keep your head down." Velthar followed the patrol into the rocky terrain outside the base. The landscape was harsh and broken, full of deep ravines and tall stone formations. Perfect for ambushes, he realized with growing concern. The patrol moved carefully through the rocks. Minho used hand signals to direct his soldiers. Private Hyun-Soo Lee took point, while Corporal Jun-Ho Sim covered the rear. Yuna Nam stayed in the center, ready to treat any wounded. After an hour of careful movement, they spotted the Krek scouts. Velthar got his first close look at humanity's enemies. The Kreks were impressive creatures standing nearly 3 meters tall. Their thick gray skin looked like natural armor. Their weapons were sleek energy rifles that could punch through most known materials. 12 of them. Minho whispered into his radio. "We've got 5. Velthar expected the humans to withdraw and call for backup. Instead, Minho grinned and checked his rifle. "Hyun-Soo, you take the 3 on the left. Yunyo, the ones on the right are yours. Yuna, stay ready. Everyone else, pick your targets." The attack came suddenly. Bright plasma bolts flew from the Krek's positions, turning rocks to molten slag. The humans scattered and took cover, but they didn't retreat. Instead, they began returning fire with their simple bullet weapons. What Velthar witnessed next challenged everything he thought he knew about warfare. The humans moved like they had practiced this exact situation hundreds of times. They covered each other perfectly, taking turns to advance while others provided supporting fire. Private Hyun-Soo Lee did something that made Velthar's blood freeze. When he saw Corporal Jun-Ho Sim pinned down by heavy fire, Hyun-Soo stood up and ran directly into the enemy fire. Plasma bolts flew around him as he sprinted toward his trapped comrade. "What is he doing?" Velthar shouted to Minho. "His job," Minho replied calmly while shooting at a Krek's warrior. Hyun-Soo reached Jun-Ho's position and threw a smoke grenade. Under cover of the thick gray smoke, both humans moved to a better position. Hyun-Soo had risked his life for no strategic advantage, just to help his friend. The battle continued for 20 minutes. The Kreks had superior weapons and numbers, but something was wrong with their tactics. They seemed confused by the human behavior. The Kreks fought like logical soldiers, seeking cover and firing from safe positions. The humans fought like madmen. They took risks that should have gotten them killed. When Yuna Nam saw a wounded Kreks trying to retreat, she actually left cover to provide medical aid to the enemy soldier. "Why is she helping them?" Velthar asked in confusion. "Because that's what medics do," Minho explained while reloading his weapon. "Wounded soldiers get help no matter which side they're on." The Krek's warrior stared at Yuna in shock as she bandaged his wounds. He said something in his language that sounded like a question. Yuna couldn't understand the words, but she smiled and patted his shoulder before returning to cover. As the battle ended, Velthar counted the results. 3 Kreks were dead, 4 wounded, and 5 had retreated. On the human side, only Junho had a minor injury from rock fragments, but the numbers weren't what disturbed Velthar. It was the human behavior during and after the fight. They had shown no fear. They had risked their lives for each other without hesitation. Most disturbing of all, they had shown mercy to their enemies. On the way back to base, the humans talked and laughed as if they had just finished a routine training exercise. Hyunsu whistled a cheerful tune. Yuna hummed along while checking her medical supplies. "Good work out there," Minho told his squad. "That should slow down their main advance." "Did you see that big Krex with the scar?" Runyo asked excitedly. "I swear he ducked when I shot at him." "Never seen one do that before?" The others laughed. Velthar realized they were actually enjoying themselves. These humans had just fought a battle where they could have died, and they were treating it like entertainment. Back at the base, Captain Park listened to Minho's report. "Casualties?" "Minor scrapes only, sir. The enemy retreated after losing several soldiers." "Excellent. That should give us more time to prepare the main defenses." Velthar pulled Captain Park aside. "I need to understand something. Your soldiers took enormous risks today. Why didn't they use more careful tactics?" Captain Park looked at him with surprise. "Doctor, careful tactics would have meant letting the enemy scout our positions and report back. We couldn't allow that. But they could have been killed." "Yes, they could have," Captain Park agreed. "But they weren't. And now the miners are safer because of what my soldiers did." "How can you send people into such danger?" "I don't send them anywhere," Captain Park said firmly. "They choose to go. Every one of my soldiers volunteered for this mission. They know the risks." That evening, Velthar sat in his quarters trying to write his report. The Dominion Council expected detailed analysis of human weaknesses. Instead, he had witnessed something that defied explanation. These humans fought in ways that should have gotten them killed. They took unnecessary risks to help each other. They showed mercy to enemies who were trying to kill them. They laughed and sang after battles where they could have died. By every logical military standard, they should have been defeated easily. Yet somehow they kept winning. Velthar typed slowly. "Human military behavior appears to violate basic survival instincts. They prioritize group welfare over individual safety. This should be a weakness, but somehow it makes them more effective in combat. Recommend continued observation." Outside his window, he could hear the humans preparing for tomorrow's larger battle. They were still singing. Someone was playing a musical instrument. Others were sharing stories and laughing. Velthar closed his eyes and tried to understand. These creatures were facing an enemy that could destroy them, and they were acting like they were at a celebration. What kind of species had evolved such strange responses to mortal danger? As he fell asleep, Velthar heard Yunanam's voice drifting through the night air. She was singing a gentle lullaby to help the wounded soldiers rest. Her voice was beautiful and sad, full of love for people she barely knew. For the first time since arriving on this world, Velthar felt something he didn't recognize. It took him several minutes to identify the emotion. It was fear. Not fear of the coming battle, but fear of the humans themselves. They were unlike anything he had ever encountered, and he was beginning to suspect that was very dangerous for the galaxy. The main Krex assault began at dawn with thunder that shook the ground. Velthar watched from the command bunker as hundreds of enemy soldiers advanced across the rocky plain. Their heavy weapons lit up the morning sky with deadly energy beams. Lieutenant Somin Kang stood beside Captain Park, studying the tactical display with calm eyes. "Sir, final count shows 412 Krex soldiers. They have heavy artillery support and air cover." Velthar did quick calculations in his head. The humans had 60 soldiers and basic defensive walls. The odds were nearly 7-1. By any reasonable military analysis, this should be a massacre. Recommendations? Captain Park asked his officers. "We could retreat to the secondary position," suggested one lieutenant. "The miners would be defenseless," Captain Park replied immediately. "Next option? Call for emergency evacuation," offered another officer. "Evacuation ships won't arrive for 3 days minimum," Lieutenant Samin noted. "The attack will be over by then." Captain Park nodded and turned to face his gathered officers. A strange smile spread across his face. "Well then, I guess we hold the line right here." Velthar stared at the human commander in disbelief. "Captain, you cannot be serious. The numbers are impossible. Doctor, Captain Park said calmly. Impossible is just another word for difficult. Minho, get everyone to their positions. Yuna, set up the aid station in the secondary bunker. Hunyo, I want all your explosive surprises ready. As the officers scattered to their duties, Veltar grabbed Captain Park's arm. This is suicide. Your people will all die. Captain Park looked at him with those strange human eyes that seemed to burn with inner fire. Maybe. Or maybe the Kreks will learn why humans don't give up ground easily. The first wave hit the outer defenses like a storm. Kreks warriors charged across open ground while their artillery pounded the human positions. Velthar expected to see panic and confusion among the defenders. Instead, he witnessed something that defied all logic. The humans fought with coordinated precision that seemed impossible under such overwhelming assault. Every soldier knew exactly what to do and when to do it. Private Hyunsu Lee manned a heavy machine gun on the eastern wall. When Kreks warriors broke through the wire barriers, he didn't retreat. Instead, he laughed and shouted, "Come on, then. Let's see what you've got." Corporal Junho Sim had prepared the battlefield with homemade explosives hidden throughout the approach routes. As Kreks forces advanced, he triggered his traps with perfect timing. Cooking equipment from the mess hall had been turned into deadly weapons. But what amazed Velthar most was how the humans adapted to each new threat. When Kreks flyers attacked from above, Private Yoonji Han created improvised anti-aircraft weapons using mining equipment. She welded together metal plates and explosives to make flying projectiles. How did she know how to do that? Velthar asked Lieutenant Soman. Humans learn quickly under pressure, Soman replied while coordinating defensive fire. Yoonji used to work in construction before the war. She understands how things break. The battle raged for 6 hours. The Kreks threw wave after wave of soldiers at the human positions. Their superior weapons carved holes in the defensive walls. Their heavy artillery turned sections of the base into smoking ruins. Yet somehow the humans held. More than held. They began to push back. Velthar watched in growing horror as the human defense turned into a counterattack. When ammunition ran low, they used rocks and metal fragments. When their positions were overrun, they fought hand-to-hand with knife and fist. Unanam performed surgery in the aid station while explosions shook the building around her. She sang quietly while working, her voice steady despite the chaos outside. When wounded Kreks prisoners were brought in, she treated them with the same care as her own people. Why do you help them? Velthar asked her during a brief lull in the fighting. Yuna looked up from bandaging a Kreks warrior's arm. Because they're hurt, she said simply. That's all that matters right now. The turning point came when Captain Park made a decision that seemed like pure madness. The Kreks had concentrated their forces for a final assault on the main gate. Instead of reinforcing the gate, Captain Park ordered most of his remaining soldiers to follow him on a flanking attack. Sir, that route goes through the toxic waste processing facility, Lieutenant Soman warned. The atmospheric readings show lethal contamination levels. Then we better move fast, Captain Park replied. Minho, tell everyone to hold their breath and run like hell. Velthar followed the assault force as they ran through the poisoned industrial complex. The humans moved through toxic clouds that should have killed them in minutes. They ignored the burning in their lungs and the stinging in their eyes. The attack hit the Kreks' rear positions like lightning. The enemy had never expected anyone to assault through such dangerous terrain. Their carefully planned assault collapsed into confusion as they found themselves caught between two forces. But what broke the Kreks completely was what happened next. Instead of accepting their victory, the humans pursued the retreating enemy for 3 kilometers. They chased warriors twice their size across broken ground, shouting battle cries and singing war songs. Velthar ran after them, struggling to keep up with soldiers who should have been exhausted after hours of combat. Private Hyunsu Lee had been wounded twice but still charged ahead with a bloody bandage around his head. Corporal Junho Sim had lost his helmet and most of his armor, but continued fighting with fierce joy. The Kreks' retreat became a full rout. These proud warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds fled in terror from humans they outnumbered 7-1. They abandoned their heavy weapons and ran for their transport ships. When the pursuit finally ended, Velthar found himself standing in the middle of a battlefield littered with abandoned Kreks equipment. The humans had not just survived an impossible assault, they had won a complete victory. Captain Park stood on a pile of enemy weapons, breathing heavily but smiling. Well, he called to his soldiers, I think we made our point. The human soldiers cheered and embraced each other. They had just achieved something that should have been impossible, and they acted like it was just another day's work. "Sir," Lieutenant Soman reported, "final casualty count. We have 8 wounded, none critical. Enemy casualties estimated at over 200. Velthar's mind reeled at the numbers. How had 60 humans defeated 400 Kreks with minimal losses? It violated every principle of warfare he understood. That night, as he struggled to write his report, Velthar realized he was witnessing something far more dangerous than simple military tactics. The humans hadn't won through superior strategy or technology. They had won through sheer determination and something else he couldn't identify. They fought not just to survive, but to protect others. They took impossible risks because they believed their cause was worth dying for. Most terrifying of all, they seemed to actually enjoy the challenge of facing overwhelming odds. Velthar typed slowly. Human military effectiveness appears to increase under extreme pressure. Their willingness to sacrifice for others creates unit cohesion that transcends logical tactical doctrine. Recommend immediate strategic reassessment of human capabilities. Outside, the humans were celebrating their victory with music and stories. They had faced annihilation and won. Tomorrow they would likely face another impossible battle, and they would face it with the same insane confidence. As Velthar listened to their voices in the night, he felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold air. These creatures were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They turned desperation into strength, suffering into determination, and love into the most powerful weapon he had ever witnessed. For the first time in his long career studying alien species, Velthar began to wonder if some things were too dangerous to understand. 2 weeks after the impossible victory, Velthar found himself documenting behaviors that made his reports to the Dominion Council increasingly alarming. The humans had settled into routine garrison duties, but their strange habits continued to disturb him. Corporal Taehyun Bae spoke to his rifle every morning before patrol. Velthar watched him clean the weapon with gentle care, then whispered to it like a trusted friend. "Good morning, beautiful," Taehyun would say. "Ready for another day?" When Velthar asked about this behavior, Private Jiwano laughed and showed him her own weapon. "This is Thunderbolt," she said proudly, pointing to a name painted on the rifle stock. "She saved my life 17 times. The weapon was covered in small marks." Jiwon explained each one represented an enemy soldier she had defeated. She spoke about these kills with pride, but also with a strange sadness that Velthar couldn't understand. "Do you enjoy killing?" he asked carefully. Jiwon considered the question seriously. "No, Doctor. I enjoy protecting people." Sometimes killing is necessary for protection. More disturbing was how the humans bonded with each other. They shared everything: food, equipment, stories, fears. They knew details about each other's families, dreams, and hopes. This level of emotional connection should have made them weaker in combat, but somehow it made them stronger. Velthar observed training exercises where humans would risk injury to help wounded comrades reach safety. They practiced these rescue techniques constantly, until helping others became automatic reflex. "Why do you train them to take such risks?" Velthar asked Captain Park. "Because we leave no one behind," Captain Park replied simply. "That's not just a rule, Doctor. It's who we are." The breaking point came on a routine patrol 3 weeks after the big battle. Sergeant Minho Choi led a small reconnaissance force to check abandoned Krek's positions. The mission should have been simple and safe. Instead, it became Velthar's introduction to the darkest aspect of human warfare. The patrol walked into a carefully planned Krek's ambush. Advanced enemy soldiers surrounded them in a narrow canyon with no escape roads. The humans fought desperately, but they were overwhelmed by superior numbers and firepower. Velthar watched in horror as Sergeant Minho was wounded and captured alive. The Kreks dragged him away while his soldiers could only watch helplessly from cover. "We have to get him back," Private Hunsu said immediately. "The Kreks don't take prisoners," Corporal Junho replied grimly. "They'll interrogate him for information, then kill him." When the patrol returned to base, Velthar expected standard military protocol. Write off the captured soldier as a casualty. Focus on the larger mission. Accept the loss and move forward. Instead, Captain Park called an immediate planning session. "Minho has been captured," he announced to his officers. "We're going to get him back." Lieutenant Soman studied the tactical maps. "Sir? The Kreks have taken him to their main interrogation facility. It's heavily fortified with at least 200 guards. I don't care if there are 2,000 guards, Captain Park said flatly. We don't abandon our people. Velthar couldn't stay silent. Captain, this is tactically insane. You're risking 60 soldiers to save one man. The mathematics don't support this action. Every human in the room turned to stare at him. The silence was heavy and dangerous. Captain Park's eyes grew cold. Doctor, Captain Park said quietly, we're not mathematicians. We're soldiers, and soldiers don't leave their brothers behind. The rescue mission launched at midnight. Velthar followed to observe what he expected would be a doomed assault. 30 humans attacked a fortified position defended by 10 times their number. What he witnessed challenged everything he thought he knew about warfare and logic. The humans moved through the Krex facility like avenging spirits. They used tactics that bordered on supernatural. Private Hyunsu climbed vertical walls that should have been unclimbable. Yunanam crawled through ventilation shafts too small for normal human bodies. They communicated without words, each soldier instinctively knowing what the others would do. When Corporal Junho's explosives ran out, Private Jiwon handed him hers without being asked. When Taehyun's rifle jammed, Yunji provided covering fire without hesitation. But what broke Velthar's understanding completely was the fury he witnessed. These gentle humans who sang lullabies and helped wounded enemies became something else entirely when one of their own was threatened. They fought through the Krex facility like natural disasters. Walls couldn't stop them. Superior numbers couldn't slow them. Enemy weapons couldn't break their advance. Velthar followed Hyunsu and Yuna as they battled toward the interrogation chambers. The young private moved with deadly grace, defeating Krex warriors twice his size. The medic followed behind him, but instead of just treating wounds, she seemed to flow around obstacles like water. They found Minho in a cell deep inside the facility. He was injured but alive. When he saw his rescuers, tears flowed down his face. I knew you'd come, he whispered. I told them you'd come, but they didn't believe me. Of course we came, Yuna said gently while checking his injuries. Your family. The escape was just as impossible as the rescue. 31 humans fought their way out of a facility designed to be impregnable. They carried their wounded sergeant and still managed to defeat every enemy force that tried to stop them. When they reached safety, Velthar counted the casualties. 3 humans had minor injuries. The Krex facility was completely destroyed, with over 50 enemy soldiers killed or wounded. More importantly, Sergeant Minho was home safe. That night, as Velthar struggled to write his report, he realized he was no longer studying human military tactics. He was witnessing something far more fundamental and terrifying. These creatures had weaponized love itself. Their bonds with each other made them stronger than any armor. Their willingness to sacrifice for others gave them power that transcended physical limitations. Human emotional connections appear to be their primary military asset, he typed slowly. They do not fight as individuals, but as a collective organism. Threatening one member triggers extreme protective responses from the entire group. He paused, staring at the words on his screen. Then he added, recommend extreme caution in any future engagements with human forces. Their tactical responses become increasingly dangerous when their social bonds are threatened. Outside his quarters, he could hear the humans celebrating Minho's return. They were singing again, their voices full of joy and relief. Tomorrow they would face new dangers, new impossible odds, and they would face them together, with the same insane confidence that had carried them through today's miracle. Velthar closed his eyes and wondered what his superiors in the Dominion Council would think when they read his reports. Would they understand the danger these humans represented, or would they dismiss his warnings as the fantasies of a researcher who had spent too long among aliens? As he drifted toward sleep, Velthar heard Yuna's voice singing a lullaby to help Minho rest. Her voice was beautiful and gentle, full of love for her rescued friend. The same voice that had guided a warrior through impossible dangers just hours before. The same gentle hands that had healed wounds also, wielded weapons with deadly skill. For the first time in his life, Velthar understood true fear, not fear of death or pain, but fear of encountering something so alien that it challenged the fundamental nature of reality itself.